All right, we are recording now. So welcome again, everybody. I do want to preface this with our original intent was to actually launch next week, or next week during COABE, which obviously is not happening right now, and or at least for the time being because of COVID-19. And so we did push things up significantly earlier so that we could get this tool out as quickly as possible and into the hands of instructors because of the prevalent need for people to find resources that they can easily share with their students. Because of that, right now there is not an instructor guide. I am furiously working to pull that together. It will be very simplistic and will probably be a work in progress as we go, even once it goes live. But in the meantime, this video will be available and you'll be able to see all of the steps that you need right now to create SkillBlox. And you'll also have access to the slides, which have some nice detail in terms of how to do certain things. So another thing that I wanted to share up front here is that this link, bit.ly/SBWeb 01. If you want to type this link into a new tab in your browser, that is where you can actually access a copy of this slide presentation. I will be sending out, as a follow-up to this presentation, the slides that we're going to walk through today. The video link to this video or the one that happened yesterday, depending on which one goes best. I will send out a link to that recording so you have access to that. And as well as information about webinars we have coming up next week that we will be doing that are sort of follow-ups to this one. So today's webinar, and again, this is the second introduction webinar, is literally just to see how you sign up for SkillBlox, how to manage content in your library within SkillBlox, and you will leave today being able to make SkillBlox. And we'll get into what the heck a SkillBlox even is in a second. Next week, we are going to focus more on actually looking at the resources that are in SkillBlox. So we have nearly 2,000 free and open education resources, lessons, activities, simulations, games within SkillBlox. We're not going to dive deep into all of what those different things are today because our focus is literally just to get people up and running and exploring. Those two webinars will be next week, and I will give you links to those webinars to sign up in the follow-up email as well. So in terms of what we are, just one other thing, sorry, because we are in a flurry of activity right now in trying to help instructors get set up. If you are interested in, and I'm assuming most of you are, in understanding strategies to start in some way, shape, or form offering distance learning to your students in practical ways, the EdTech Center at World Education is offering a series of Friday strategy sessions at 1 p.m. Eastern every single Friday, started last week. And sorry, I'll also preface this with, I do have a cough. It is not that. I've been to doctors. I'm fine. It is more allergy or other thing related. These strategy sessions last 1 hour. They bring in experts to do lightning talks on different techniques. And then if you're interested in one of those things, they split into breakout rooms where you can actually have discussions and do Q&A around those different strategies. Last week, we really just talked about establishing communication with your learners, and I talked about tools that you can be using with your learners for communication, for content, for sharing information with your students. This week's, which I think is going to be of particular interest to a lot of people, is strategies for actually verifying and tracking learner work in a world where you might just be throwing anything at them virtually and you have no idea how to track how much time they are spending in learning. So we're going to look at something called teacher verification model, where the teacher actually sort of indicates or determines how long a resource or activity would take. And so verification that the student has completed that sort of is a log of the amount of time that they're spending in learning, as well as strategies that are being done in New Hampshire right now, where it's actually student self-reporting, where they've created sort of and condition their students using either apps or other tools to actually track their time in learning and report that to teachers so that they have sort of verification of learning in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's going to be a really interesting session this Friday that might be of interest. So for today's webinar here, what we are going to do is introduce you to SkillBlox, and then we are going to do a full-on hands-on tour of the site. It is a free tool that everyone has access to, and we are going to walk through start to finish, logging in, searching for skills, finding resources that align to those skills, and even adding additional resources that you might have access to from publishers for which we have the alignments to those skills as well. We're also going to just quickly touch upon some starter ideas for using SkillBlox, just so after today, if you decide to go forth and explore, you have some things in mind in terms of, hey, I might actually use this in this way, or maybe this is the best way to use SkillBlox. We've intentionally made it extremely open-ended right now in terms of the platform, because we really don't know how teachers are going to use a tool like SkillBlox, because as far as I know, it's really the first tool of its kind that does what it does, and we'll see what that is in a second. And then I do want to leave time, probably the last 5 to 10 minutes, for questions. And I will stop throughout the presentation for you to ask questions. So you will see at the bottom of your panel, there is a Q&A button that you can click to ask questions. Excuse me, those go directly to me. There's also a chat link, it might be under more for you, and a number of you have already started using the chat button. So if you have questions there, please go ahead and you can chat them as well. I'll be monitoring both throughout, and I'll be stopping at various points to ask questions so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. So again, I'm pretty sure most of you who are on here probably are somewhat familiar with Crowded Learning, but Crowded Learning is a nonprofit organization based here in Chicago, along with Holly, hey Holly, who has our mission is entirely focused on increasing awareness and use of free and open education resources in adult education. We've been at this for 2 years, and it's always been sort of this notion of, well, we know there are these free resources that are out there, that's great, but it's really hard to find them, or I don't know if they're even effective or if they're aligned to the skills that I need. And it simply takes a lot of time for folks to sift through these resources. And that is an understandable set of obstacles that we see over and over again. So what we've been really focusing on is expanding awareness of sort of the best of the best based on teacher feedback and teachers' suggestions of what they are using. In particular, sort of resources that are more comprehensive in nature, not just cherry picking various things that are out there, but things like Khan Academy that we know are widely used within adult education. And we know there's a high level of trust of it because it is so widely used amongst all levels of education. The imperative for being able to find those resources quickly and easily is obviously escalated right now during this time where suddenly everyone is having to teach at a distance. So, you know, it's not just about finding those resources, but we've also done a lot of work looking at promoting effective strategies for sharing those resources and integrating those resources into instruction. So again, we find ourselves at a point in time where that is particularly important. The third thing that we've done on a limited scale up to this point is experimentation with sharing and with delivery. And SkillBlox really represents a huge experiment. This is a tool that has been developed because of what we have learned in terms of finding out what are the barriers to using free and open education resources in adult education. And the biggest ones have been the time it takes to sift through these things and understanding how they align to the skills that students need to teach. And so we believe that SkillBlox will help sort of overcome both of those barriers for a lot of teachers. What we have done up to this point, and if you've been to Crowded Learning's website, is based on asking teachers what you are using with students, excuse me. We have compiled sort of the hot hits, if you will, of free and open education resources that are being used by adult education instructors in various subject areas. So on our website under Explore, we have something called skill directories. And in there, you can find these directories in academic skill areas, in employability skill areas, and in 21st century skill areas. So these include full-scale curriculum, these include video sites, these include vocabulary tools that you can use in these areas, and others. But that was just sort of step one. Here are all these websites that you can use. Now, go forth and explore. And as I said earlier, that takes time. So with SkillBlox, we're getting a lot more granular than just saying, here's a website you can go to. We're actually taking those websites and sort of trying to answer the question with SkillBlox. So what if instead of going out and searching through these various books that you might have or online resources that you know are quality for content, what if we brought all those things together in one place, where all you had to do is find the skill that you need to teach, and then based on the resources that you use, you can see exactly what lessons, activities, and other things within those resources align to those skills, and then you can select those things and share them with students. And so that is what SkillBlox tries to do. The way we've been building SkillBlox is really, which is just a database, is taking these sites that we know are high quality and for which they've provided their standards alignments and gathering those standards alignments. Now, on our website, we have actually, as we've been building SkillBlox, we have been posting these alignments as spreadsheets, as you can see here. So if you go to the Crowded Learning website right now, you can actually access these spreadsheets that have all of the practice sets in Khan Academy and their alignments to, as you can see, the College and Career Readiness Standards, TABE, the domain, the standards, and even the emphasis level on the TABE test, and then finally the link to that specific activity. So everything that's in SkillBlox, you actually have access to the spreadsheet, basically, that we uploaded into SkillBlox. So all of those have been available, but the challenge is you've got to go to this spreadsheet, and then to this spreadsheet, and then to this spreadsheet. The second thing that we have done is, excuse me, been working with publishers to gather their alignments of their resources as well. Now, they, again, have been providing, if you go to any publisher website and look for resources, they typically have PDFs that you can download of their standards alignments, of their TABE alignments, and other resources that you can use. Again, that's great, but those are all separate documents that you have to manage and look and find what lessons are going to be helpful for this student who needs to work on this skill. By gathering their alignments, we've been able to upload those as well, so you can see exactly what lessons within the resources that you have access to align to the skills that you need to teach. Now, one caveat of that is by selecting one of these resources in SkillBlox, and we'll see how you do that later on, you're not getting access to that book, right? It's not like the pages are going to be online. It is simply a guide for you to know that this lesson or these lessons align to this particular skill. So when you're making those selections, you're doing that because this is a print resource that we have in our classroom that my students have access to, and I want to know what lessons within it align to this skill. But right now, your students may not have books because they are all at home. So most of the things you're probably engaging students with right now are going to be online resources. So in terms of what is in SkillBlox at this moment, we have nearly 2,000 unique standards-aligned free and open education resources, and those include lessons and videos and games and simulations, excuse me, and other interactivities that students can use. They are all mobile friendly, and that was by design. And actually, it's 2,000 unique URLs. Those 2,000 unique activities actually span about 4,000, almost 5,000 actually, different standards aligned activities. So, certain, say, simulations within PhET actually align to multiple standards, and they can help sort of unearth concepts in a variety of different standards. So this is the library that we're working on. 2,000 is a lot, but again, we're going to see how easy it is to sift through those with SkillBlox. One thing before we dive in is how is content organized in SkillBlox? So we basically used as our underlying framework for content the College and Career Readiness Standards. And the reason for that is those are sort of the widespread adult education standards. Some of you may be in states that have your own adult education standards. In many cases, they have picked up a lot of things from the College and Career Readiness Standards. Within that, however, you may not sort of know the nomenclature, quote unquote, of levels A, B, C, D, E, which is how those standards are organized. You may be working in sort of a TABE environment. You may be using TABE. So this chart, which will be in the user guide, shows sort of the equivalencies across levels, whether or not maybe you're a K-12 teacher and you decided to join because you need to find resources. These are the grade level equivalencies of those levels. These are the NRS levels that apply to these college and career readiness levels. And then these are the TABE levels that correspond to the college and career readiness standard levels. Right now, the only filter we have in SkillBlox is the CCRS. And you'll see what I mean by that in a second. We are awaiting from DRC, which is the company that creates the TABE test, their updated sub-skills. Because once we have those, we will actually put those in as well. So you will have a toggle feature that allows you to either search by CCRS levels or to search by TABE levels. And when you do the TABE level, what that will do is on the new TABE score reports. Now, again, mind you, we aren't really able to test our students right now. However, when we are back and able to test, the score report that has been updated for TABE, where it indicates the specific skills that students need to work on, those will actually be what you see as you search for skills in SkillBlox. So you'll be able to make a one-to-one sort of a correlation between what students need to work on and how to search for resources within SkillBlox. So for those of you who don't know the college and career readiness standards or that hierarchy, just a quick overview of that. So the hierarchy of the standards at those A, B, C, D, E levels, and mind you, actually I should have said this up front, right now the resources in SkillBlox are all math. That is the only subject area that we have at the moment. We're doing that because this is experimental and we want to see how teachers and instructors are using it. In the future, we are hoping to add in more resources and more subject areas, excuse me, reading and language being the priority. Math was just the easiest because of the way that content already tends to be segmented and tagged. It made us easier for us to get a lot of resources in there quickly. We do have reading resources on our website, and so if this is a non-starter for you and you don't want to stay, I understand. But you will see sort of how SkillBlox works, and that will obviously be the same for reading. Next week's webinars, we will be looking more at the actual content. Within that, we will be looking at reading because there are a number of great resources on our website that we have aligned to the CCRS to the degree that we can at the moment. But in terms of the CCRS structure, this is the domain. So this is going to be something that you first see in terms of how you search for content. And then within that, there are subdomains. So this is TABE level M, CCRS level C within the standards. And the domain is operations and algebraic thinking. And then there are 3 subdomains within that. And then finally, you have the standards. So there are 5 total standards across these 3 subdomains, as you can see here. So you will be searching for content by domain and subdomain, and then within that, you will actually see what those standards are within that subdomain. And that's nice because you won't have to have a copy of the standards next to you as you're working in SkillBlox. All of this information that you see here will be right in front of you and available as you're looking at content. So what does SkillBlox allow you to do then? So using that hierarchy that we just saw, you will be able to search by CCRS level as you see here. So I could click on level C, and then that's going to filter for me what subdomains are within math at level C. And then you will be able to click on the domains and the subdomains and see what learning activities exist that align specifically to the standards within that subdomain. So now you can see here, I've clicked on the top subdomain, which is generalized place value understanding. And this is the start of the list. I could only capture so much on the screen cap, but you see this is the first resource listed, and here is the standard. Now, if I click on that standard, it's going to show me the standards language. You can also see that with just this one sub domain, there are 29 resources that align to this subdomain across the various resources that we have within SkillBlox. You then will be able to select which ones that you want to actually use in the skill block that you create. And you can, to make it easier for you yourself, you can filter. So maybe you just want to see what Khan Academy lessons are in there because your students are used to Khan Academy, but the challenge that you've always had is they don't know where to go within Khan Academy. This will help you organize that so you can point students directly to the lessons that they need to go to. And this is a challenge that we actually heard from a number of teachers who are using Khan Academy, but it was a noted challenge that students sort of can't self-navigate within the website. So this will be helpful. So this just allows you to filter down that set of resources to the specific things for which you want to see what aligns. And again, as you can see in here, there are our 3 publishing partners listed. So those aren't automatically going to show up for you. You are going to have to manually indicate what resources you have because that's going to be different for different teachers. The other thing about SkillBlox, just so that I can sort of help you understand how this works, is once you create a skill block, and that's what it looks like, there are no student accounts. It is simply a 6-digit code that is generated for students. And on the SkillBlox login page, all they do is enter that code and they view the skill block. And then they can see all of the resources that they have the option of working on that align to that particular skill. And again, as I mentioned, all of the resources within SkillBlox, the open education and free resources, are mobile friendly. So one of the things that we know is a lot of more students have internet access, by way of their mobile device than they do by a computer. So this has been very intentional that the resources that we are including right now are specifically mobile friendly resources. SkillBlox itself is not designed at the moment to be mobile friendly. When you're looking at a skill block that's been created as you are here, while it hasn't been mobile optimized, it's very user friendly in terms of how it appears on a phone, as you can see. Teacher side, you're not going to be creating skill blocks on your mobile phone. You will need to use a computer. So just a caveat up front on that. And then one final clarification before we dive into SkillBlox. Many of you have been going potentially to a page on the Crowded Learning website, called SkillBlox. That remains on the Crowded Learning website because that is where we are providing information about like these webinars and upcoming webinars. That is where we provide a link for you to launch SkillBlox. That is where we provide all of those resource alignments that you have access to at any time. So all of those things will remain there on the Crowded Learning website. The actual tool, SkillBlox, is its own website. It is skillblocks.org. You're going to see in a second. We will be there. And these are separate sites. In terms of those resource alignments that we do have on our website, just because this is of interest to folks right now, the only things that we have in SkillBlox are resources for which we have been provided the alignments, meaning even Khan Academy, we haven't done any curation of their resources. We are taking the standards alignments that are provided at face value. So we've only included those things because we are not making judgment calls right now in terms of what aligns and what does not. There are other alignments that we do have on our website for which either we don't have those specific standard alignments, although we are in conversations to try to get them, and or they are more teacher-led resources. So that's the other thing, is all of the things in SkillBlox are things that you can literally just send to your students and then they can access and work on. We do have other things in the alignments within the Crowded Learning website that are aligned that require a teacher, that you couldn't just provide the link and the student would be able to do anything with them. So Math Antics is one site that students can use. This is a video site that we know is widely used, but they do not have standards alignments. But on the Crowded Learning website, we've provided at least, we've organized it by CCRS domain so that you at least have that ability to sort of find videos that align to specific skills that you might teach. Common Core Sheets is another one that we have on our website. These are worksheets. These are PDFs that you download and that you print out and you would hand out to worksheets. Now, obviously, that may not be helpful now. However, I do know that a lot of districts are starting and organizations are starting to, for those students who don't have internet access, to print out resources or make photocopies of resources and create packets of work that students can do and pick up who don't have internet access at home. Common Core Sheets, there's about 5,000 plus worksheets on there. They are all college and career readiness standards aligned, and we have those alignments on our website. The ones on the right for the reading folks, we do have alignments to these two sites, to the college and career readiness standards domains. But again, these are teacher sort of directed websites. Like there are assignments that you have to create. But on our website, what we do is provide alignments where when you click on a cell in our spreadsheets for those, it's going to automatically filter these leveled libraries, ReadWorks and Common Lit, to the CCRS level and the domain level, so key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, and the Lexile range that is appropriate for each of those levels. So again, instead of having to sift through everything in there, we've automatically pre-populated filters so that you see all of the readings that are in these leveled libraries that would be appropriate for learners at different levels. So now we're going to hop into SkillBlox. And so in the next half hour, which it should only take that long, we're going to create an instructor account. We're going to find skills that you teach. We are going to select learning activities that align to those skills. We're going to add print resources so that you can include those as well. And we're going to just sort of share ideas about how to organize and share your SkillBlox as well. I'm going to stop here for questions. So, as students do activity, does it indicate they did that? That is a great question. So, the webinar that I mentioned at the start of this on Friday on student self-reporting and teacher verification, definitely check that out. Next week during my webinar, I'm going to share some tools that I recommend using for student self-reporting. Now, again, down the road, well, SkillBlox right now is an experiment. Down the road, we do want to have learner accounts. And the reason we want to have learner accounts is because we want them to be able to indicate that they have completed a resource. Again, we sort of need to see how that works. We are going to be engaging people, including maybe you, to serve as pilots so that we can talk through some of these things and ask students how their experiences ask instructors how their experience is. And we will gather all that information so that we know exactly how to do that. Right now, you will not be able to do that. That said, CK12, Khan Academy, and Flexbooks, which are three of the resources in here, they all do have student accounts. So if you're using those, when a student launches into that resource, either they'll automatically be logged in if they're doing it from their own device, or you need to sort of help them understand, make sure you log in so that you get credit for that work. Because on the back end, there is reporting of those websites of student completion. The other ones, Math is Fun and FET, there are not. But hopefully, as you'll see, you can create activities around those things where students might actually just do something as simple as answer a one question sort of prompt that asks them to list 5 things you learned. There's many different ways that students can self-report, and we are going to dive more and more into that over time because it is a barrier for a lot of resources that are really effective that could be used in adult education that currently aren't, because we have sort of these weird stringent reporting requirements. All right, so I'm going to escape out of this and I am going to go to SkillBlox. Now, again, as I said earlier, this is the Crowded Learning webpage that is crowdedlearning.com/SkillBlox. Here's all the information. I want to point that down here is where you access those standards alignments. So you can go to reading, math, and language, and there's other things in here as well that are just high quality things that over time we do want to bring into SkillBlox. But here's where you can get those links to the CCRS aligned filters for these 2 resources. Read Theory is a self-guided reading program that's leveled that I highly encourage reading teachers to look at. And then under math, Again, we have all of the alignments for the resources that we've included within SkillBlox, and we'll be adding more over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to go back actually to the SkillBlox page just again so you can see that here is a button where you can just launch SkillBlox. So now we are in SkillBlox. I am going to delete this so that it allows me to create my a new teacher account so you can just see what a teacher is seeing on Square One. So I am going to sign up here, and now nope, it automatically logged me in. I don't want you to do that. And this could be a bug that I need to address. So let me see if I can sign up. Okay, perfect. So I want to sign up for a teacher account. I am just going to use a dummy email. And I will keep the same password. All right, so that's how I create the account. Oh, my password fields didn't match, so sorry. And I'm trying to type too fast, so let me slow down. Okay, now we should be able to sign up. You're gonna see it prompts to ask you some questions about where you teach, the levels that you teach, and your role, and the estimated number of learners you serve. At the bottom of the login, you'll see our privacy policy. The only reason that we're gathering this information is we need to know how people are using this. Your information is not shared in any way, shape, or form. This is a free tool that we provide and will always be free. Part of what we need to do is capture like who's using it and how. That's how we make and state the claims to funders and to foundations to say, hey, we need more money to keep this going and to make some of the updates that we want to make. So the questions you'll be asked is, what is your role? So I'm going to say that I'm a teacher and a curriculum developer, that I teach ABE, and I serve, let's just say 50 learners, and then I'm going to submit that. And so now I'm in. So what you're going to see is what anyone sees here on day one, which is, I just want to make sure I'm zoomed correctly, nothing. You're going to see your empty dashboard. It's my SkillBlox. I do not have any SkillBlox. You're going to see a manage library button. That's where you add publisher resources. You're going to see your name up here, but the only thing you can do is log out from that. There's no profile. There's no adding an image. This is bare bones right now. You're also going to see this bug, and I'm going to share with you in a little bit what you can do with that bug, because it's a super helpful tool for us to actually gather information about how people are using SkillBlox. But what we're going to do, step one is create a SkillBlock. So the way that I do that is I click on Add SkillBlocks. And you're going to see exactly what we saw on the slide earlier, where it's a two-step process of selecting your domain and selecting learning activities. Now, again, this looks like a pull down. It's only CCRS right now. Once we have the TABE alignments in there, you'll be able to pull it down to TABE, and then these levels will change to LE, MD, and A, which are the TABE levels. Right now, I've selected no levels, so it's listing every single domain across all levels of the college and career readiness standards. A lot of these down at the bottom are obviously level E or TABE level A, and then a number of these down here span multiple levels. I'm just going to go straight in the middle, level C, which is TABE level M, and now you see that it's listed out the 9 domains that are part of level C within the college and career readiness standards. And then you're going to see what these are. Now, if I open up any of these are those subdomains that I was talking about earlier. So for each of these, when you click, they expand and contract, and these are the particular subdomains. Now, I'm going to focus on geometry just because that's been the thing that I've been demoing with. And I'm going to select draw and identify lines, angles, and classify shapes by properties of their lines and angles. So within that, you're going to see that there are a bunch of different resources. I think there are 20 that align to this particular subdomain. And that subdomain actually only has, as you see here, one standard. And that standard is draw points, lines, line segments, rays, and perpendicular and parallel lines, and identify these in 2-dimensional figures. I do like pointing out this subdomain and this standard for a very good reason. You may, even when you get back to your real world and you have that book in front of you, have lessons that you know align to this skill. There's a difference between alignment and coverage. So I've seen some of the newer products that are out there that are very good and do a really great job of presenting this information. But on the lessons that I've seen in particular for this standard, they do a great job at this part of the standard, identifying two-dimensional figures, but there's nearly nothing in there for students to actually, where students are being prompted to actually draw these things. And so that's one of the things that we realize makes SkillBlox really important, is that you may want to use that publisher resource as your anchor curriculum because it is consistent, it has the same sort of format for every lesson, it is print so everyone can have it and do it in class. SkillBlox allows you to find additional resources that can augment that and maybe even provide more depth of coverage of the standard, as well as just provide more options for learners for whom that book lesson was not enough. So you will also see if I click on multiple standards, so I'm going to click on this, that now there's 28 resources. So on the right-hand side, I see this domain, excuse me, subdomain. And again, I can expand and contract these. So here are the resources that align to that second domain. So I may want to combine these subdomains and create one skill block that has everything, or I might want to get really granular and just specifically focus on each of these areas. You can add as many things as you want. You can even take a standard from geometry, put it in here, and then go to measurement and data, because a lot of, here's geometric measurement, a lot of measurement actually is related to geometry. So now I've got a skill block that is actually combining two different domains where we're looking at the properties of the geometric properties of angles, lines, raised segments, etc. But then we're also building in activities that deal with measurement of those things. So you can mix and match anything that you want. When we build in other subject areas, you'll be able to do that. You could have a digital literacy set of skills and a reading set of skills in one skill block. So how you use that, this is what I'm talking about, trying to figure out what people's use cases are, is going to be up to you. And I'm really interested in seeing how folks are using it. I, for this, am going to just focus on this one standard. So I'm going to indiscriminately and very quickly pick out ones because I'm familiar with the things that are in here and the things that I feel best align to this standard. So we've got lines, and do acute angles, and then actually all of these Khan Academy practice sets are really solid. So I'm going to pull all of these resources together, and I'm going to click Save. And now that I've clicked Save, you will see that all of these things are listed within the skill block. I'm just going to stop to see if there's any question. Yes, I see someone asked. Yes, by simply clicking on them, it automatically will add to your skill block. You do have to save it. Now, what you're going to see for some of these resources is you're going to see that they actually align to multiple standards. So when you're in the adding the resources view, what you were seeing was the specific standards that fit within that particular subdomain. When you put them in your skill block, you'll actually see that some of these, and remember, we actually pulled that standard, so these actually align to both this geometry standard and that measurement standard, or subdomain that I pulled up. And so you'll see sort of that interrelational sort of thing that's going on between some of these standards. So now what are you looking at? And I'm going to zoom out just so we can kind of see everything. So you're looking at this skill block that has a lot of resources. Now, you may or may not want to thrust this in front of a student. That's going to be up to you. If your goal is just to put stuff up and get them in front of students, then great. And I'll show you what that means in terms of sharing it with students in a second. If you want to tailor these in a sequence that you want students to then work through, you can do that as well. Now, one of the things that I know is going to be a challenge for folks, and it's going to be something that we figure out, and I know we'll get feedback on this, is that I already know that I want the ability to be able to select like multiple ones of these and move them all at once. You cannot do that right now. So there is a ranging that has to happen, but it's sort of a, you do it once and it's done. So one thing to note about Khan Academy's resources, and I'll show you. So for any of these now that they're in here, you can click, you can launch, and you can see what that resource actually is. So I may see this, go to it and go, ooh, no, this doesn't actually fit what I want to teach. Or I may go, ooh, this actually isn't really, this might be too high level. Because again, some of these things we've been taking at face value and saying, hey, you've provided this standard alignment. You can see here, they've provided that. But maybe it's too high level. So if you don't want to use that resource, all you have to do is go back to select learning activities, and you could remove that resource. Actually, this was the one that I did. And then it will not be in the SkillBlox. So that's all you have to do is go back here and deselect ones as you look at them. And then your SkillBlox will be updated. I'm not going to do that because I know all of these do a really good job at covering this particular standard. But these are all practice sets. And one thing to note about Khan Academy, the reason that we only have the practice sets is it's the only thing that they really provide clean alignments for. Because when you go to this actual full lesson, you'll see this one lesson is covering a lot of different skills and a lot of different standards. And there's no way to actually link directly to it as far as we know. Once we know how to do that, we will probably add that option. So right now you're simply going to the practice set. But within Khan Academy, just so like you understand sort of how that might actually work, within Khan Academy, when a student is in a assessment or practice, at the bottom, there's always this link stuck, watch a video or hint. I recommend that, if a student is struggling with these problems, then they can use this to go to the specific videos that provide the instruction for them. So they're going to be in that spot where they can learn and practice that particular skill. It will require some understanding of how to sort of navigate within, but they're going to be brought to this area where they have access to those instructional videos and then also those practice sets. So in terms of rearranging, all you have to do is basically use, this is called a hamburger menu, use these to drag things around. So I'm going to, again, I'm going to show this because I want you to see what SkillBlox is and what this isn't. There are things that are a little bit challenging, I think, but they're usable entirely. All I need to do is sort of drag all of these. And the reason I actually moved this to zoom out is because when you do have a lot of resources, as I do here, it's easier if you're zoomed out, because then you can do that. And I am going to go through the process of moving these all up there, because I do want to be realistic about what this is. I am working with teachers in a couple states to focus on, hey, maybe we find teachers that do work together or that teach math, and have a handful of teachers go ahead and focus on geometry at this level, and have some teachers focus on this and develop their own skill blocks within specific areas that have been assigned. Once that's been done, you have a SkillBlox code that can be shared with anyone. There are no student accounts, so you can share it with other teachers, you can share it with students in other classes. You can always make these available to students, regardless of whether they're in your class. All they need is that code, and when they go to log in, all they have to do is enter this code, and they will see exactly what you see here. So supposing that I actually want to just put this up in a manner that is kind of like a lesson where students are walking through. I could intermix where I have these lessons and then have these practice sets. I'm going to just keep them separate for now because I went through that work. So, we know that we're talking about angles and angle types and lines. So I'm going to move lines up front because that's really the first thing. This is sort of an overview of angles, and then there's specific, I'm going to move the lines one up here. So we've got lines in geometry, parallel lines, angles, and then we get into specific, actually this one will need to fall after here. So now I've got my lesson on lessons, and now I've got this lesson and follow-up lessons on angles, and then one that actually mixes the two, parallel lines and pairs of angles. And I'll actually move this up here. And again, you probably want to evaluate these before you do anything with them. But now I've got sort of this nice sequence. And remember that thing I talked about where students are identifying angles, but they're not drawing them? Well, that's the great thing about these Khan Academy lessons. So again, I'm going to move these in order, but you will see very clearly we have these identify lines, and then we have this draw activity online. We have identify parallel and perpendicular lines, and then we have this lesson, or excuse me, practice set on drawing. And then we have this lesson on angle types and recognizing angles, and then we have draw. So, you know, amongst these and these, you're providing really broad coverage of the standard. So now this is all saved. If I go back and decide I want to add other activities, which we're going to do because we're going to look at the publisher resources, all I need to do is, again, go back to select learning activities, which we'll do in a second, add those resources, save it, and then they're going to be put into here at the bottom so that it doesn't disrupt any of your order. What you're also going to notice is there's this star here where you can select and deselect. This is for the notion that maybe you want to prioritize things for your students. So maybe you star the things that you want them to sort of be required. These are things that you absolutely have to do. And then leave blank those things that are just there. If you want additional practice or help, you can use these resources. So you can kind of use those however you want, but that's how they're designed. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it, and this is a naming thing that I realized on the bigger account that I have where I've created a lot of these is helpful. For organization's sake, it's going to be helpful for you to think about what you want at the front of it so that in an alphabetical order or alphanumeric order, you can filter all of your skill blocks in a manner that makes sense. So I've been naming them by the level and by the domain. And then I'll call this properties or lines and angles. And I'm going to save that. So in my list of skill blocks on my dashboard, which you're going to see, I now have one because we've created it. Once that gets longer, you're going to want to be able to sort by something. So just titling it this is not going to be helpful. You might want to name it by level. Then you have this access code as well. There was one other thing. Oh, the other thing I wanted to show you within this view is maybe you use a tool like Wakelet. And Wakelet is a tool that allows you to curate various resources and put them into one place. So maybe you don't want to share the skill block, but you want to actually take that lesson and put it into a Google Classroom activity, or you want to use Remind to text out, hey, do this practice set. When we meet virtually later this week, we're going to talk about this lesson, or hey, watch this video. Within SkillBlox, all of the online resources have this little copy link, and all you need to do is click on it, and it's going to copy that to the clipboard. And then in a tool like Wakelet, all you need to do, this is not like necessarily a real Wakelet that I'm using, but all I need to do is I can just, and I don't know why Wakelet's being slow, paste that URL in, and that will automatically be added into my Wakelet, and then I have the ability to play around with this. I'll actually go a little bit more in depth on Wakelet actually next week because I think it's a great tool. But if you're using Remind to text out things, if you're using Google Classroom or even WhatsApp or anything, all of these links are clickable and copyable, and then you can just plop them into however you want to share content with learners. So again, it could be used simply in that case. This becomes your just place where you're organizing all your curriculum, and then it's just always there, and then you can just copy paste basically what you want to use when you want to use it with your learners. I'm going to stop for questions. There is not a way to mass load or integrate skill block resources into Google Classroom. Well, there is. If you just want to put this whole thing in, you could literally just say, go to SkillBlox and just provide them with the code. And then that will allow them to, you just provide the link to SkillBlox and say, this is the access code that you will use for this skill block, and it will be uploaded. Yeah, down the road, this is a great question. One of the things ideally I'd like to do is to be able to import this into something like Wakelet, and then all of those activities would populate, in here, so the teacher could add instructions for each one or things like that. Right now, no. But the thing you can do is just condition them, go to SkillBlox, and then just give them the code. If you have a class website, you might just want to say, hey, go to SkillBlox, and then name these skills, provide the code, and then they have this list of things that they can go to at any time to access them. I do see a question too. I see it's the same question. So thank you for asking these. All right, so we have about 8 minutes left. I may go over, but I do want to show how to use Manage Library. So Manage Library is where if you have print resources that you want to include, you can use them. And actually, I forgot to show on the SkillBlox website, on Crowded Learning's website, way at the bottom, we have our participating publishers. And if you click on the list of resources, you can see all of the resources for which we have alignments in SkillBlox. So this lists out all of the things from McGraw-Hill education for which we have the standards alignments in SkillBlox. We do need to do some updates because we've been getting a lot more over the past few weeks, and we just had to worry about getting the site up and running first. So the way you add resources, remember when we went to SkillBlox and there were no skill blocks and you had to click add skill blocks? It's the same thing with this library tool. You have to add print resources to your library. And the way you do that is you click on this. And you'll see it's a list that you can search. It's only math and it's only CCRS, but you could search by levels if you wanted to. But since you have the resource on hand, ideally, you're just going to want to search by the title. So I'm going to be equitable to all of our publishing partners. I'm going to select number power. I know that's a widely used McGraw-Hill resource. All I need to do is click on these, and I got to move this and save. And now those are all saved to my library. If I want to add something else, so I know a popular series from New Readers Press is Score Boost. I simply need to click on these. Now, since we're looking at level M, I'm going to actually make sure that I get the level M resources in there. All right, so I've added those three. You can also search by ISBN up here if you want to verify that you have the right edition. So now those level M Score Boost are in there. And finally, we have Paxson. Paxson has their table-aligned series called Tabe Tutor. So I'm going to just add all of these. So now I've built up this library. And the thing about this is a one-time thing. Once you've added your library resources, you don't have to really go back here unless your school or district purchases new books. And then you can go to your library and add those resources in. So now all of these titles are in my SkillBlox, my personal SkillBlox library, on top of all of the free and open resources that are within the SkillBlox library that everyone has access to. So I can go back to this skill block, and again, right now the skill block contains just the free and open education resources. Now I go to select learning activities, and I can see, I'm actually going to filter, and use the filter because I didn't show that last time. I'm going to go to McGraw-Hill. So here's the lesson from McGraw-Hill that aligns. So I'm going to add that. Now I'm going to go to New Readers Press. Here's the one from Score Boost that aligns specifically to that skill. And now I'm going to go to Paxson. And here's the lesson from the Paxson title, Tabe Tutor, that aligns. I'm going to add those. So now when I go, you'll see again at the bottom, those have been added. And again, one of the use cases that we do know is pretty popular is using these core curricula as sort of the spine of your instruction and saying, do this. And again, this may not apply to you right now because you may entirely be working virtually and students don't have access to these resources, these print resources. But you could still build them in right now. And then, as I showed you earlier, just deselect them. So just say, hey, you don't have access to these right now, so you're not going to see them. And then this is what a student is going to see. So they'll see that these aren't starred, and then they see all of these are. And then you'll see that, again, not now, but in the future, you'll be able to print these for your students so that you can just have them available. And obviously, the links mean nothing in a printout, but at the top, you're going to see, go to SkillBlox, enter this access code, and students will be able to access that skill block from a computer or from a mobile device. So I'm going to log out of SkillBlox in a second here. And actually, there's one more thing I'm going to show. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is this little bug. So this is called Bug Yard, and it's a way for you to actually provide feedback on the website. So you could provide general feedback about the website. So this could be, you know, originally we were thinking, oh, you should only use this for actual bugs, like, oh, this doesn't work, you know, which happens. And that can be really tricky because it's hard to describe exactly what it is that isn't working. But I'm sort of suggesting, and this will be in the user guide, that if there's feedback on something that could be better, like I really wish that I could bulk select things and move them together, you can use this to do that, and you can provide general feedback, or you can actually provide point and click feedback. So I'm actually going to go back one, excuse me, to my main skill block. So I'm going to go to click on the bug yard, and I'm going to say I want to point and click. And so what this allows you to do is hover over on the exact thing that isn't working. So if there's something like the star thing isn't working, or the standards alignment isn't popping up, you can provide that very specific feedback, and we get a screenshot that shows us exactly what it is that you're looking at. We even know your browser and all that, so that we can troubleshoot any issues that are happening. But you could also use it to say, hey, you know, this lesson right here, I don't think I can type. I really can type. Think this lesson aligns. Then we'll be getting that feedback, and we'll be able to sort of investigate that, see if there truly is an issue of alignment. And with our publisher partners, we're not going to share your information, but we will share any feedback that we get where there's maybe indications that certain resources, lessons, activities don't align. So that's all that on the teacher side. I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to log out of SkillBlox here. And I'm just going to show you now on the SkillBlox login page, all the student has to do is enter that code and view SkillBlox, and this is what they see. So again, these print resources, they're not going to mean anything to them. They can't click on anything, but if you're in a classroom environment, they know exactly what book to go to and exactly what lesson to go to. More importantly, they have access to all of these free and open mobile-friendly resources that are online as well. So that's kind of the gist of it. One thing I want to share is next week we will be talking about, in addition to diving into content, ways that you might share these skill blocks or the resources within through various tools, because I know that is really important because everyone's doing things differently right now, but there's lots of ways for you to share the content. And then in terms of just last follow-ups for us, definitely stay in touch with us, and please experiment with SkillBlox and stay in touch through our newsletter. You can sign up for our newsletter on crowdedlearning.org. We do want you to share feedback and ideas, and so not in the follow-up email tomorrow of this webinar, next week after we've done all 4 webinars, and I encourage you to sign up for one of the 2 next week. We will be sending out a survey to everyone to gather information about what other things do you want to learn how to do with SkillBlox, what other kinds of trainings can we provide to help you better utilize this tool. And within that, not necessarily the next 2 weeks, because I'm kind of scrambling with everything that's going on right now, but in the near future, we are going to be reaching out to people to invite them to participate in pilots so that, again, we can get just more sort of hands-on information about how teachers are using this and want to be able to use this, as well as, more importantly, how students are able to use this. Because ultimately, we want to have a tool that students don't lose access to when they sort of exit formal education, and that they're used to using, where they understand that these are resources that can help them learn concepts. So we are at the noon mark, or 1 hour mark. The question to your answer, Jeff, is no, students do not need an account. So I think I've addressed, there might be one more. Nope, I've answered all the questions that I see. Are there other questions that you have at this point? If you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. And again, it's miraculous. I never finish on the hour. Someone said they kept hearing a banging. That may have been, I'm the only one with audio. So yeah, I'll know not to do that because I probably am getting a little excited here. Sorry about the banging noise. I wish someone would have pointed that out earlier. Are there any other questions? Yes, the question, can you share this? You will get a link to this recording or probably the one from yesterday because I don't think there was the banging yesterday. And that will be shared with you in one of the follow-up emails, and you're free to share that with anybody as well as encourage them to sign up for the webinars that we'll be doing next week. We won't go into this much detail on the how-tos, but we will sort of cover them to some degree. All right, I think that is it. Thank you for your time today. I hope this is helpful. I know we are all sort of dealing with lots of things work and life-wise right now, so I'm hoping this is helpful and not sort of adding to the pile of disarray that I know that I feel right now in this time. So again, thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and I hope to see you in the future. All right, take care.